Good evening and welcome. You're safe here. The day is over. The world can wait. The noise has faded. All that's left now is your breath, your blanket, and the quiet hum of a strange old story. You've probably heard how it ends. Cleopatra, the last queen of Egypt, died by suicide. A snake, a bite, a tragic love story. That's how the history books tell it. But what if that wasn't the truth? What if her death wasn't a choice but something else? Tonight, we're going to slow time and return to the heat and stone of ancient Alexandria, to the woman behind the myth, and to a version of the story you may not have heard, one with fewer poems and more politics. This is the death of Cleopatra, not as it's been told, but as it may have truly happened. Let's begin. Cleopatra V was not the woman most imagined. She didn't bathe in milk. She didn't seduce with beauty alone. She was not Egyptian by blood, but Macedonian Greek, descended from Ptolemy, a general of Alexander the Great. She ruled not with romance, but with calculation. Languages, laws, philosophy, she mastered them all. She became queen at just 18 and reigned over Egypt for 2 decades. Her kingdom was shrinking, her enemies growing. But Cleopatra knew how to survive. She ruled through intelligence and influence, often wrapped in softness, but sharp beneath. She aligned herself with powerful Roman men, first Julius Caesar, then Mark Antony, not for love alone, but for leverage. She played politics with the patience of a cobra, until it no longer worked. Rome turned cold, and Cleopatra, once untouchable, found herself surrounded. But even then, she had one final move. You've heard the version with the snake. That Cleopatra, locked in her mausoleum, grieving Mark Antony's death, pressed a poisonous asp to her skin and let death take her gently. The story goes that 2 of her servants died beside her, and that when Octavian's soldiers arrived, they found her calm, pale, and already gone. It's poetic, clean, tragic in a cinematic kind of way. But it's also suspicious, because asp venom doesn't work like that. It causes seizures, pain, sometimes hours of agony, and Cleopatra would have known that. She had studied poisons. She tested them on prisoners. She knew their effects. She would not have chosen that kind of death, especially in front of witnesses. The ancient sources don't agree either. Some say it was poison in a comb, others say a venomous ointment, or even a blade. The truth is blurry, and maybe intentionally so. When powerful people die too neatly, the real question is often simple: who benefited? And in Cleopatra's case, the answer was clear: Octavian, the soon-to-be emperor of Rome, later known as Augustus. He had just defeated Mark Antony. He had Egypt cornered. But Cleopatra was still dangerous. If she lived, she could charm again, negotiate, stir the East against him. But if she died, he'd claim her treasure, her land, her legacy, all without a trial, or a messy spectacle. Her death gave him everything, and yet it needed to look like her choice. A noble, dramatic end. A woman who took her fate into her own hands. Clean, mythic. He let the story spread. He never corrected it. He wrote the ending the world still believes. But there were no Roman witnesses to her death, only her maids who also died. Convenient silence. No one to contradict the story. Cleopatra's final hours were spent in a mausoleum, a tomb she had built for herself in advance. She locked herself inside with her most trusted attendants. Octavian's men demanded entry. She refused. They forced their way in, and when they arrived she was dead, or so they said. But no one truly saw her die, and that kind of locked room scene raises questions. Some historians believe she was already captured, that she died in custody, that her death wasn't a suicide, but an execution dressed up to look noble. Octavian wouldn't want her paraded in chains. Rome admired her too much. A public trial would be complicated, but a private death that looked like legend, that was useful. The story they told was tidy, and like most tidy stories from history, it probably wasn't true. Cleopatra wasn't just a ruler. She was a chemist. She had a collection of poisons, tinctures, salves, powders, each tested on prisoners, each studied carefully. She knew which ones burned, which ones paralyzed, which ones killed quietly, and which ones made a mess. If she had wanted to die peacefully, she had the means. And yet the supposed method, an asp, was neither clean nor reliable. It's more likely the snake was symbolic, a myth layered over a quieter truth. Something slipped into a drink, or forced into her food, or placed in her hand. A controlled death orchestrated by someone else, someone who needed her gone, and needed the world to believe she chose it. It's possible Cleopatra saw it coming, that in her final hours she played along, that she helped write the scene herself, one final performance, a queen curating her own myth. Even as the curtain was pulled, the earliest sources we have were written by her enemies. Plutarch, Dio Cassius Suetonius, all Roman, all writing years after her death. They didn't know her. They knew the version Octavian left behind, and they repeated it. The snake story, the romance, the vanity, the drama. They painted her as beautiful, manipulative, doomed. It was convenient. Rome had conquered her, and the best way to conquer a queen is to turn her into a cautionary tale, one who dies for love, who breaks when her man is gone. It reduces her, softens her, makes her less threatening in memory. But Cleopatra wasn't weak. She ruled through famine, betrayal, war, and empire. Her enemies wrote poetry, but what they feared was power, and they buried that fear in fiction. After Cleopatra died, Octavian took Egypt, its gold, its grain, its gods. He returned to Rome not as a general, but as a god in waiting. He changed his name to Augustus. He became the first emperor, and Cleopatra, the last pharaoh, was written out. Egypt would never be ruled by a native queen again. Her children disappeared from the record. Her monuments crumbled. Her tomb, once grand, possibly sea-facing, was lost to time, and the silence around her death only deepened. That silence served Rome. No questions, no scandal. Only the images of a beautiful queen defeated by love, conquered by fate. But history is rarely that clean, and legends are often built where truth once stood. In the end, Cleopatra's real power wasn't in how she died, but in how impossible it is to forget her. One mystery remains unsolved. Where is she buried? Cleopatra told her servants to bury her with Mark Antony. That's the legend, but the tomb has never been found. Some say it lies beneath modern Alexandria, buried under layers of stone and sea. Others believe it's in Osiris Magna, near a ruined temple west of the city. Excavations have turned up clues, coins, statues, chambers, but no queen. It's possible her tomb was destroyed, or looted, or simply hidden too well. But if it is ever found, and if the remains can be identified, we might finally learn the truth. How she died, how she was buried, whether it was suicide or something else. Until then, her body, like the truth of her final hours, remains out of reach. Wrapped in salt, buried beneath centuries of sand, sleeping in silence. Cleopatra's death became a symbol, but her life was something far more complex. She was not defined by love, or death, or tragedy. She was a strategist, a polyglot, a survivor, the last in a dynasty that had ruled Egypt for 300 years. She didn't lose because she was emotional. She lost because Rome was too big and too ruthless, and yet they couldn't erase her. Thousands of years later, she still reigns in memory, more famous than the men who tried to bury her, still debated, still romanticized, still powerful, and maybe that's why her death was rewritten. Not to honor her, but to contain her, because a queen who dies for love can be mourned, but a queen who chooses silence, power, and control to the very end, that kind of woman can't be forgotten, only reshaped. Now as you lie still, beneath your blanket, with the weight of the world behind you, think of Cleopatra, not as a legend, not as a lover, but as a ruler, alone in her tomb, still and silent, dignified, unbroken. Let the noise of history fade. Let the myths quiet themselves. She's resting now, beneath stone or sea, beneath rumor and record. Her death may never be truly known, but her presence never left. You don't need to solve it. You don't need to decide. Tonight, just rest. Let the empire fall. Let the sand cover what it must. Let the queen sleep. And you do the same. Good night.